Well, fellas, 10 games. 10 games remain. Separate.
It's the final countdown. Ba-na-na-na.
Really is. Really is. How, Keith, I'm not going to ask you because I don't want to just again continue to recirculate, recycle, and injure the
My sports soul.
yeah. Well, at least your fantasy soul, your sports soul's been tainted since you unfortunately were born into born into Atlanta team. Jorge,
Yep.
how we looking? Any game? Any leagues on the cusp of defeat or victory?
Well, I was in all my leagues that I was either a top seed or a top 2 seed in, which I think was like 4 or 5 of them. I got bounced in all of them, upset in all of them, and so pretty disappointed. I don't get to repeat in the IDP league that you and I are in, but you're in the title game right now, so I'm rooting for you to bring home that title. But no, just it's one of those things where you lose and you don't make it to the championship and you're pissed off and whatnot, and then you start to think, well, at least I'm not super stressed out as I would be right now. But then again, it's like, no, but I'd rather be stressed out and than deal with the aftermath. But it sucks, but it's great cheering everybody else on who's in it, who you're fans of. So
yeah, that's
is it really? I want to be a hater and say screw all you guys that are still alive in the playoffs. Welcome to Loserville with me, population 1.
love it.
Then yeah, I won't even bring anything. It's all in all, I would say this is, I think, Jorge, this earmuffs here, but not doing as much of the IDP mainly content and focusing more on redraft. This has been by far the better season as far as consistency between all of them, from like finishing in the NFFC prime time.
Who's your most owned player, Nate, in those things, since you had such a good year? What guys kind of over and over again helped you?
Alvin Kamara has been the one that's been on the most, I would say, of all of them. Terry McLaurin's been probably number 2. And then it's been sprinkles of, different people throughout. It's not the same. I mean, those guys are the underlying kind of cog that have kept everybody together. But then there's been, luckily pieces like having Saquon here and there and having Lamar Jackson at the right time to get him. And the time when I've spent up in like an auction league to get Josh Allen has paid off. The getting Jameson Williams in many leagues. But all in all, it's been good. I don't like the scenarios that are unfolding in front of me for the the championship, but it is what it is. And we have, like I said, we have 10 games to separate the winners from the losers, or at least to make your decisions haunt you forever or, help you forever. Let's, John in the chat has the first question of the day. Good morning, John. And he has serious thoughts about benching AJ Brown to play Garrett Wilson, and his opponent has, Aaron Rodgers. That's the Kenny Pickett to AJ Brown dilemma is one, of course, that many are going to probably have to face today. Keith, I'll let you start off. I mean, is the pivot going from AJ Brown to Garrett Wilson?
There's no way I'm sitting AJ Brown. You look last week, I mean, the Eagles are a condensed offense as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Last week, only one player, once Kenny Pickett got in, not named A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, even saw a target. I think Brown was targeted 15 times by Kenny Pickett in his first start. A.J. Brown was talking about after the game how he was glad that Kenny Pickett got some reps in case they need him later, a.k.a. this guy actually throws me the ball all the freaking time. I like that as a wide receiver. I get it, but I don't know if I can sit AJ Brown knowing that he's gonna get a lot of volume. And I think that the Eagles, obviously, if you're the Cowboys, you're gonna try to take away Barkley. That's what I would do if I was a defensive coordinator, especially with Kenny Pickett in there. And just the run is going to be different, meaning I think they're going to lean more on the pass. And we've just seen, now if Devontae Adams for some reason was ruled out, which from what I've seen, that's not going to happen. I could understand the Garrett Wilson, but you're basically trading an alpha target for the second option on an offense that's not been like the most prolific passing team in the NFL.
Well, and throw in the fact that it's going to be up to 40-mile-an-hour winds in that Jets game. I like Garrett Wilson in the play. I mean, I go on Wednesday night or Thursday night or whatever night it was. I guess it was Thursday that we did Fourth and Frames. Garrett Wilson was definitely one of my plays that I liked prior to the weather forecast. And if you watch that game with AJ Brown and Kenny Pickett, exactly like you said, Keith, it was always and often, just always to get to AJ Brown. And it wasn't that AJ Brown was just getting a ton of separation, easy throws, pass and catch, get the first down, move on. It was big body contested catches that AJ Brown went up and got and was physical. And I think that sits in your head when you're Kenny Pickett thinking, okay, I can just chuck the ball anywhere to this guy and he's going to go make a play. And I see 12 to 15 targets again, like as a true, I don't want to call it ceiling, but a true play. Jorge, you kind of follow along the same thing we're saying?
Yeah, I mean, you look back to last week, AJ Brown led all wide receivers in targets with 15. It's going to be, and I agree with Keith, it's definitely one of those situations where the Cowboys are going to have to decide whether they're going to stop the passing game or they're going to try to stop Barkley. From a fantasy points perspective, they both running back points are 9th most favorable, wide receivers 10th most favorable. So it really is pick your poison here for, which way you want to go with this. I will say I understand the Garrett Wilson play like you just alluded to, but, on Shoot the Gap, which is IDP related, but the content I'm about to talk about is universal. There's the notion of starting your studs versus playing matchups, right? And so which way do you lean more in this particular situation? Do you look at trends, or do you look at just the name value and then the surface level matchup here? And so the surface level matchup here, I'm seeing AJ Brown is in a position to be hyper targeted by a quarterback who is not Jalen Hurts, versus a wide receiver who is probably not going to be hyper targeted because he has Devontae Adams as his fellow wide receiver, right? If the question was Devontae Adams, AJ Brown, that'd be a lot tougher for me to make this decision. Here, it's no brainer. It's AJ Brown.
Yeah, no, that's the nice thing. We all agree it is AJ Brown. I do understand the thoughts, John. I hope maybe that help. I don't think there's any other. There's nothing that would sway me any news going into the game other than AJ Brown's not going to play. That's about it. So, Mr. Scampers, good morning. Always good to see you. And I know Albert's going to be here with us as always too. It's such a positive Sunday morning when you get to see the same people. I get to see you guys, which is great. Don't get me wrong, but to be honest, the three of us talking to each other into outer space is great. But what are we going to do? Answer each other's dilemmas of who do I start?
If we have to, right?
Absolutely.
Let's see. Mr. Skipper says, still alive, projected to win, but facing Achane, Cook, and Aaron Jones. And I have Kittle, Jameson Williams, and Isaac Guerrero all playing Monday night. How on earth does my heart actually survive? You play some Celine Dion, My Heart Will Go On, and you let that song carry you through today and tomorrow, and you will survive, and your heart will go on, and hopefully you'll be bringing home a title with you, Mr. Scampers.
And if you do win and you make a TikTok or a video or something with Celine Dion playing in the background, we will definitely make sure to play it, not mockingly at all. It will. Oh man, yeah. It's a shout out the underappreciated inner space.
Nice. John is in agreement with our takes here. So good. Glad to hear it. And good luck to you, John.
So I briefly touched on the weather, and I know that's been a point of contention the entire week. Everybody's talked about weather and the impacts it will have. And for people that might not be on it, here's a little bit of some updates as far as what's going on. As I mentioned, the Jets in Buffalo, noon kickoff or 1 p.m. for you guys. 90% chance of rain, showers, 14 to 20 miles an hour wind with up to 40 mile an hour gusts. So we know that game could be more of a ground game. Obviously, Josh Allen's probably the biggest winner of the or the less of the losers when it comes to a game like that because it stays on the ground. So his
he needs
value
it too, for being
Yeah.
honest, right? Like I think that Christmas Lamar performance and the fact he probably will not play, I would assume week 18 with everything wrapped up for the Bills. I do think he needs a pretty good performance to sort of lock up the MVP, which I think is important to him and Buffalo and everybody.
Mm-hmm. And of course, James Cook has been a winning player for many fantasy teams, and he will see plenty of work. Here's a question I have for you guys. What is it with the Jets running attack that this sets up a rushing type game? Breece Hall, not exactly been the model of efficiency or of quality this year. Jorge against a Buffalo defense that is susceptible at times more through the air than on the ground. Is Breece Hall going to be one of those names that you think we'll see in the chat of a decision to make, or is that a no-brainer?
I definitely think it's going to be a game in the chat that we'll be talking about. I get it. Bad weather, run the ball. Insert narrative, of why. Yes, I understand that. But man, it's kind of hard to trust somebody just because of just the weather, just because of weather, I feel like this is a situation where both James Cook and Josh Allen are going to have big days running the ball, and this game is going to get kind of out of hand. And the Jets will, if they're trying to be competitive, will have to unfortunately still have a more balanced attack and kind of air it out a little bit more, despite the bad weather. So I'm a little concerned for Breece Hall, but I can understand that point there of the whole weather being something that would force him to get a little bit more volume.
Speaking of concern, a little concern for George, not necessarily overly concerned, of course, because anybody that's joining us is going to get the good luck mojo. But he's riddled with injuries and unfortunate poor performances. He has to start, Mason Rudolph and Aiden O'Connell. James Conner and Cooper Kupp killed him last night, as did James Conner killed me as well. Empathetic towards you, George. Needs a wide receiver and a flex, full PPR. Of the wide receivers, whether these two do you start? Jaden Reed, Jawan Jennings.
For me, I was going to say especially with the situation, give me Reed. I know some might lean Jennings, and we can talk about this in a second because he may end up being the flex that we want to use. But Jaden Reed's best game of the year came earlier versus the Vikings. The Vikings run a crap ton of zone. That is what Jaden Reed, fantasy points per target, yards per route, all that stuff is much better versus zone than it is versus man. And I'm somebody that believes that game's going to be a good bit of points. I think that, people keep talking about how good this Green Bay defense is, and it's fair with the numbers. But if you look at who they've played the last 8 weeks, not exactly a murderer's row of QBs. And Sam Darnold torched this team week 4 on the road, and he's been even better at home. I think the Vikings are going to move the ball, and it's going to force Jordan Love to get going. And that's good for Jaden Reed because, we've seen they've been controlled by Josh Jacobs now for the last 6 weeks. I don't think they can get away with that against Minnesota's really good run defense. So I think his upside, and especially, again, you got killed by Kupp and Connor. We kind of have to go in that situation for who's going to bid me the biggest gains. I actually think Jennings is a safer play
Yeah.
of the two, but outside of that 40-point game earlier this year, you know, like 15, 20 points is the most he's had all year, to where Reed has shown he is capable for going off and catching, you know, multiple touchdowns a few times this season.
Yeah. The upside, as you mentioned, is the key to this element. And Jaden Reed has 2 performances where he's been the wide receiver 1 and the wide receiver 2 on the, you know, on the week. And then the rest have been Jaden Reed-esque performances. Whereas Juwan Jennings, as you said, you know, he's had 3 top 12 performances, with 1 being a number 1 overall. So, I mean, their ceiling is both the number 1 wide receiver. But I think I agree in that it is Jaden Reed, with Jennings being the safer play, but we're shooting upside. So that context, Jorge, one, I guess, do you agree with Jaden Reed? If you don't, and it's Juwan Jennings, understandably so, and like to hear it. But at the running back position, Jerome Ford or Garindo?
Going back to kind of what we were talking about last week in terms of the full PPR aspect, I like Jerome Ford a little bit better here. I do agree with the Reed. Looking at his efficiency metrics over the past 3 weeks, he's the wide receiver 9 in yards per route run. So he should, and that's the thing with Jaden Reed that we can talk about today, and we'll be talking about all offseason, is that there are a lot of games this year that we'll look back with Jaden Reed and say he should have done this, he should have done that, but without there being a true alpha in this wide receiving core, unfortunately, based off of the number of targets that are spread around, that is a bit concerning for his value going into the next year. Going into today, though, I do like Jaden Reed, I do like Ford. And I do like Garindo. Damn it, Tua is doubtful to play. Damn it. So that's the question. I think I'm going to go with Jaden Reed, Ford, Garindo for me. For Jennings, it's a little bit concerning because I don't know how much the 49ers are going to need to be throwing the ball. I'm not really. That is if Tua Tagovailoa doesn't play.
Tua's not, yeah.
He's doubtful currently.
He's not going to play.
Yeah.
But so which one is it, Ford or Garindo?
He needs a wide receiver and a flex.
Just one of those two.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Ford and Reed.
Okay. I think I don't think I would put Jennings as my flex over Ford. It's just, we've seen Jerome Ford now 2 weeks in a row, one of which against Kansas City, and then followed that up with at least an explosive run coupled with good receiving upside. So I'm good with that as well. Keith, anything that completely outlier for you? That
just that I would consider Jennings for that flex. Detroit, I mean, they're walking wounded at this point. They score points in every game, which is great because that means your opponents are down and flinging it. And like Minnesota, with Reed, it's almost impossible to run on them. Like, it's just, even being San Francisco, I think they're going to be forced to. And I mean, it does concern me a little bit. We saw like a little bit of a Debo revival last week, because before last week, I could say that just means you're going to see a ton of, targets for Kittle and Jennings, but Debo got back into the mix. My only concern with Ford, because I agree with everything you said, is just with Tua out, is he going to get the upside in the passing game? Because is Cleveland going to be throwing a lot? Because with Njoku out, like if Miami, I was so excited about this Cleveland game and Jerome Ford, because I assumed Tua was playing, Miami would be up, and then we know he throws to Njoku like 38% of the time or something ridiculous. DTR has in his starts. Well, he doesn't have that option anymore. Now you're looking at, for me, running backs and tight ends, right? Because he's proved he doesn't like to throw it out wide and throw it to wide receivers. But are they still going to, need to do that in a game that really feels like it's just going to be an absolute freaking rock fight between the two of them? But I'm okay. Like, for sure would read Ford. I would just, again, like, because you're looking for upside, I do wonder if Jennings has slightly more of an upside than Ford because of the kind of game script that I think we're going to get in Cleveland this week.
Yeah. I still think I'm going to lean forward over Jennings. Just, back-to-back weeks, consistent, even in losses, RB1 performances and that baseline. Even though we're shooting for upside, it can't all be baked in upside because we also don't know the map.
Yeah,
you need still need points. And well, good luck, George. I sure hope that works out for you. And lunch table legend, I like some of these kind of questions we're going to get sprinkled in here, Jorge. So, number one, is there any sleeper, big brain defenses or kickers anyone likes? And I'll say this. I'll give my 2 cents on the kicker is I'm basically in this week with weather being the hot topic. I'm just looking for a dome game.
There's only two of them.
There's only two. One of which is, you can look at the Raiders, which Daniel Carlson is probably someone that is available. And I think that's a viable play. I don't like that game. You couldn't pay me money to watch that game as far as like wanting to see an enjoyable football game. But New Orleans defense is bad enough that Aiden O'Connell and company could get into field goal range enough times, and Daniel Carlson could be a viable option. I don't think I want to start Blake Groupie for New Orleans. And the other one is what's the other?
I doubt Minnesota and Green Bay's kickers are going to be out. Maybe though,
right? Yeah,
but that's who I would want if they are for sure.
Well, actually, I think if I look, it's debating Reichert versus Moody. So in that case, I think the answer is easy. Jorge, right? You're sticking with the dome concept like I'm thinking, or are you getting cute with Moody?
No, especially not with Moody. The guy's missed too many clutch field goals. Yeah.
How about with you? I'll throw the defensive question to you then. So it's looking at Miami, the Colts, the Browns, the Eagles, all of which are in good matchups, of course. All of which are facing really bad quarterback play on the other side, turnover heavy potential. What do you like?
So I'll throw in actually some IDP into this one as well for those who are interested. I like Miami. The Browns are giving up they're in the top 5 or top 4, I want to say, in sacks allowed on the season. And those are the metrics that you look for DSTs that help propel your scoring upward. For IDP purposes, a guy like Chop Robinson or Zach Seiler are people who I'm definitely looking to add to my defensive line spots. So it's for me, it's no brainer. The Browns, like I said, like they can't protect their quarterback worth a damn, whether it's Jameis, whether it's DTR last week. Miami's pass rush is definitely going to get to the quarterback, and that's what you want. You want
Bailey Zappi, who was actually the guy that they put in or was getting ready to put in when DTR was looking to miss some time.
Exactly what it was. Yeah, Zappy could get zapped if he starts this week. I go Miami as a surprise defense this week.
All right. Well, lunch table legend. Let's hope you'll be eating this weekend and carrying on to a championship.
And don't forget, when in doubt, just play against the Giants. My Atlanta Falcons are not a juggernaut, and they scored 25 points last week, and that was with Malik Neighbors playing, who I know it says that he's going to suit up, but we've seen this already in a few games this week where guys have suited up, and that's basically all they did because they played a few snaps and then they were out of there. So I would be cautious.
Will Power joins us on Sunday morning. Good morning to you. Chaz has the question that Keith, you had brought up earlier. Or I'm sorry, Jorge, you mentioned if it was Devontae Adams or AJ Brown.
Yeah. I here is where I'm leaning towards Devontae Adams. I just feel like the if we're using weather as a determining factor, look, like these Rodgers and Adams, they played in Green Bay. I heard it snows up there and they were still able to be fantasy successful. So something tells me that they'll be able to handle whatever's going on in Buffalo. So I do like Devontae Adams more than AJ Brown. As far as kickers are concerned, Aubrey, I mean, isn't he like the heir apparent to Justin Tucker as being the best kicker in the NFL? So think he gets my it is outside, but I don't care. I think he's one of the most accurate kickers, I think. So I'll go with Aubrey.
And a little bit, I'll add some context to the kicker questions, of course. Is there's so many different scoring formats. If it's the decibel scoring where you go by yardage as well, it's Brandon Aubrey every week for me because he's one of the few kickers. Here, listen to this. So in one league, Keith, Jorge, going into Sunday, Monday, I had a 60-point lead over the person I was playing, and they had 2 people left to go. One of which was Aubrey, and the other was the Green Bay Packers on Monday night against the New Orleans Saints. 60-point lead with those 2 guys going. And this is a pretty heavy defensive scoring where you start off with 25, and then if you have the shutout, you keep all the points, and then you gain for, like 2 for a sack, 2 for an interception, 1 for a sack. I won by 5 points. He scored 55 points out of a kicker and a defense, and a lot of that was Aubrey because he was kicking decimal scoring 54, 58, 52. He's too good from deep. I think I still agree with Devontae Adams, but man, it's my only concern is that with AJ Brown is that the Eagles often, and they want to get Saquon the yardage needed, and they just pepper him with. They just continue to give him the ball, and it turns into AJ Brown still having a good game, but Devontae Adams edging him out just by a little bit.
How about you, Keith?
I mean, I would still lean Brown. I think that his target volume only goes up with a backup. I do think that game's going to be really competitive to where, because of the weather in the Buffalo Jets game, it wouldn't shock me if that game's 10-7 going into the fourth quarter. It wouldn't shock me if that game's, 24-24. And I see 15 targets. I want to remind people in a game that Eagles were up 2 touchdowns when Kenny Pickett came in. And I'm going, because they scored, basically, I know he came in basically on the second drive, but they had already scored a touchdown. They scored again on the second one. And yet they still just peppered him. And I just think that A.J. Brown wants to prove something, especially with Diggs and those guys, playing so well. A.J. Brown believes he's one of the best receivers in football. And I think it's more likely they're going to throw with Pickett in than they would with Hurts. And if Barkley gets going, I think that's even better for Brown because that means, he gets one-on-one, and that's usually when he ends up, making the monster play. So, I would lean him by, again, the question would be like, who are their other receivers? Because both of those guys are definitely top 10 receivers. I would argue for just a Sunday slate, they're top 5. So good for you, Chaz, man. You got a loaded lineup. But you haven't decided to bench one of those guys.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So and if it was actually, if he had, pretty much any of the top receivers that you would have put into play, hopefully has had a, if it was Puka, he had a good week.
Higgins.
Which, if he started Higgins over any of those 2, that's the biggest balls of them all, and I respect that. But still,
maybe he started Marvin Mims, which great call, Chaz.
Yeah. Well, before we get there, and let's start on the other side of the ball, willpower. Is it, do you ever have names that you just say the whole name instead of just like, I want to say willpower instead of just saying Will. So maybe Michael. Yeah. Okay. So Will, if you're ever on a plane and Jorge walks up to you, just know you're going to get a very uncomfortable conversation.
Brock Bowers. I always say Brock Bowers. I can't say Brock or just Bowers. So.
Right. Exactly. Will has an IDP upside question. Pick one from these few here, Jorge.
Yeah. So it's week 17 championship game, more than likely. EJ Speed has brought me to the dance. I understand he's coming off of injury. He got his first full practice on Friday. Obviously trending in the upward direction. I would still play him this week versus the Giants. If he's out though, and Carly steps in, Carly's played pretty well. So I would, for upside, I would use him. And then one of the things about him, which is really cool, is that I believe on certain platforms he is dual eligible. Or no, on Sleeper he is technically listed as a defensive back, but he plays linebacker, so he's definitely like a cheat code there. The next one for me would then be Masala. I don't even know how you pronounce that name. Muasau.
Keep going, maybe you'll get eventually. Maybe I don't know
maybe.
How it is.
We'll find out. I guess I'll have to watch that game and just figure out what's going on. No, but ever since Okereke was declared out for the rest of the season, put on IR, the Micah McFadden experiment kind of just went, downhill. And Masao, that guy, he has come on, played 100% of snaps. I'm not worried about Ty Summers coming in and stealing opportunities. His tackle efficiency has been really good. So it'd be Speed, Carly's, and then Mua Sao. For me,
maybe Mwasu.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that could be it.
That's what I think I'm gonna go with. Mwasu. I think that sounds right.
That's good. I like that.
Sorry to Mrs. Mother and father of Mwasu.
It's like Samsonite. Oh, I was
way off. Kevin Byrne. Good morning. Needs to pick one in IDP here. Jorge, Dane Belton, Grant Delpit, Xavier Woods, Jeremy Chin.
Give me all the Jeremy Chin. I just have been a huge fan of him since he's been coming on and playing more box safety.
Just checking.
Yeah.
I was waiting for I've been a big fan of Jeremy Chin since what you have. I mean, you have not.
I have been a fan of Jeremy Chin since I've had to take a pie in the face for doubting Jeremy Chin. So
damn right you did.
There we go.
It was a humble pie in the face. What it
in
was.
The eyeballs, two pies in the eyeball.
Exactly. And now you can see clearly that Jeremy Chin is the better option.
Exactly. There we go.
All right, Nito Prado. Jorge, sorry to keep interrupting you there.
Go for it.
Well, Joe Flacco, Bryce Young. Let's start there. Context is he has JT and thought he could double up a Flacco. Is that too risky? I mean, let's start with without knowing the JT side of it at all. Joe Flacco or Bryce Young?
So I've been banging the drum here for Bryce Young the past 4 weeks, even before the fantasy playoffs, saying week 17 is the week that you want to start Bryce Young versus Tampa Bay, which is one of the most generous teams to quarterbacks for fantasy purposes. If you're a dynasty league that allows trading during the playoffs, like trade for him, try to get him as your QB2, like give up what you need to give up. If you're a contender and you're in a really good spot to win a title, Bryce Young is the super secret cheat code week 17. Here we are, week 17. Great matchup. Chuba Hubbard on IR. Even more reason for Bryce Young to throw more and run more, that's kind of been propelling him into being a top 12 quarterback during the fantasy playoffs. This has been his rushing upside. So give me Bryce Young.
Keith?
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, the only concern I have is the weather predicted in this Carolina-Tampa game. When I looked last night, this could be a slop fest. They're calling for significant rain, a lot of mud. We've seen that in Tampa before. But, I agree. I would definitely start Bryce over Flacco, but I would be checking, just the forecast, because if it's, torrential downpour, not a great situation really for either offense for, a lot of people who are counting on it. And in that sense, I'm looking at a big, like Bucky, Rashad White, control the ball. And that would be my only concern. But I also want to say Flacco was not that great this year with Indy when he made his starts. Great for Josh Downs, not great necessarily for their offense. And I have a feeling that they're going to, again, just feed Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah. Against the Giants, that's what I would do.
Yep. And a must-win game, too. Like, let's not forget that either. It's a must-win game for Indy. So,
yep. Will, you don't have to toot your own horn. Sorry, I'm going to hit that one because we should do it for you. He lost CeeDee Lamb, made a great move in picking up Marvin Mims, And wow.
How about both of those games? How about both of those games last night? The Broncos and I guess that game in particular, the Broncos and the Bengals. That was crazy.
How was that a catch by Higgins?
Yeah, he caught it with his right toe was still on the ground. I thought that he had to do another tap with the right toe before
I don't think that foot was down. But then again, there was nothing I watched. I mean, they slowed it down, and I still didn't see it. But then again, I'm not an official. I just
the last thing the NFL wants is the playoff picture to be wrapped up going into Week 18. Come on, we know that. And Broncos winning would have done that. So by allowing the Bengals to win, who got a good bit of the calls, now they have multiple games to put in their Sunday night last game of the year. And people that don't understand that does come into play. I promise you.
And guess what gets to happen also is the villains of the NFL, the stupid Kansas City Chiefs, get to eliminate the Cincinnati Bengals by losing to the Denver Broncos and keeping Joe Burrow and company out while Denver gets in, thus meaning it was all conspiracy because Kansas City's a bunch of scared bitches is what will be said by many in Cincinnati, especially, that they're too scared. They don't want to face Burrow and they laid over and let Denver win.
And there's nothing wrong with them being scared of facing. Like if I have an opportunity to go, okay, I might have to face Joe Burrow and arguably the best offense and best quarterback in football, or I can lose a meaningless game where I'm still going to get a whole week off and have home field for the rest and potentially face both freaking Knicks. Like anybody bitching about that, you're a moron because you would do the same thing in that situation or literally you're an idiot.
Yep. And for people, Bengals fans that hate me, I am not saying I don't want to play Cincinnati. Nobody would want to. It's already a murderer's row when you have to face. If you can eliminate Cincinnati to then have to play either Baltimore or Buffalo, because that's the nice thing is at least it won't be a double whammy and you have to go through Baltimore and Buffalo and Cincinnati, or at least two of those combinations. I'll take Denver or Houston or Pittsburgh or whatever the other scenario may be and go from there. So we're back to Quentin's question. You know what? I don't even want to answer this one. I'm going to let you guys answer it because I don't really like Quentin all that much.
Fair enough. Wait, is this QK16 from our Fourth and Frames League?
Yes. Yeah. The host killer.
Yeah. So we're in the, so context. We're in the sleeper chat last Monday. And he's like, my mission is not to win, just to win. My mission is to take out all the fantasy and framers in this Fourth and Frames League. I took out Jorge. I took out Nate. Chris, you're next. And we're just like, wow, this guy, the stones on this guy just coming after us individually.
I love it. I love it so much.
It's great. It's fantastic.
So he's like the John Wick of fantasy football. Is that what you're saying? He's just on a.
Yeah, he has a really good team. He needs two wide receivers between.
Let me help Quentin real quick with one of them because it's the easiest layup of all time. Chigokunkwu, if he's not in your DraftKings lineups this week at his price tag or in your lineups in general, I think outside of Brock Bowers and Trey McBride, George Kittle, those are the only three tight ends that I would feel comfortable starting over him. In my article, DFS article, the playbook, I talked about this because it is absolutely wild. He has played now 5 games this season that Mason Rudolph has been in. And in those games, 54% of his targets have came in those 5 games. He's had 21 the last 2 weeks. 55% of his receptions, 55% of his receiving yards, 49% of his fantasy points. He's been targeted 21 times and caught 18 passes the last 2 weeks. And, oh, by the way, Jacksonville ranks dead last both in DVOA versus the past and tight ends. So, Chigokunkwu, put him in all your lineups.
Yep, 100%.
I agree, for sure.
JT, welcome to the show, man. How you doing this morning?
How you fellas doing? Thanks so much. Sorry, I'm a little late here running in, but I made it eventually.
Well, let's have you answer this next part of the question. He needs 2 wide receivers: Shakir, Thielen, Downs, or Jennings. Who are you rolling with?
Ooh, that's a toughie. I feel like this is this week's. I can't make any right decisions, but I would probably go Jennings, and then Downs is a guy that I have in a ton of lineups, but now I'm like very iffy with Flacco. I mean, he's been actually better with AR, so it's like, do you think that he's going to see a ton of targets? I'm not sure. I say Jennings, and I'm probably going Thielen. Honestly, Bryce Young's look better. They're moving the ball. They're gonna have to throw. I mean, they don't have any running backs. Like, they're gonna have to throw the ball a decent amount. I think he sees a decent amount of targets. I'm kind of in the Thielen camp this week.
That is who, as of now, that is who he has starting, is Jennings and Thielen. I second that combo. Keith, do you put the third stamp on that, or are you pivoting away from?
No,
I would guess you'd pivot from Thielen of the two, but I don't think.
Actually, I would pivot from Jennings. Like, Thielen is just, I mean, we saw it 2 weeks ago. Like, his worst game with Bryce is like 5 for 50. This is a guy that scored 20 or more points with Bryce Young and like 45% of their 24 starts together over the last 2 years. But it's Josh Downs. It's just Flacco kind of unleashes him. 4 games this year with Flacco, 36 targets, 29 receptions, over 15 points per game, facing a Giants defense, allowing almost 2 touchdowns per game, 1.8 to opposing wide receivers. And I've been kind of shocked that like the loss of Dexter Lawrence I thought was going to mean teams are going to run all over him. It's really not been the case. You look, Derrick Henry did not have a very good game. Alvin Kamara had an awful game. And then I know Bijan had the 2 touchdowns last week, but if you actually look at the rushing yards, he didn't go wild. I think he only had like 95 yards, but he did get the 2 scores. So I know that, again, I think they're going to give it a lot to Jonathan Taylor, but I would be shocked if Downs doesn't catch at least 5-6 passes. One of them turns into a touchdown, you're golden. To where, again, with Jennings, I am a little worried about how much they involved Debo last week, because Debo had kind of became the third option in that passing game. And it was Kittle, Jennings, and then Debo down here. Well, last week he out-targeted Jennings. And if that happens again, I'm just looking for guaranteed volume. You're going to get that in Thielen and Downs, especially with Flacco starting.
Now, you think Keith made me feel so much better about all my down shares that I'm playing this week. So I love it. Thank you, sir.
Right.
I'm playing them everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I always feel like anything is a step up from having Anthony Richardson at quarterback, but it's like it looks shiny and nice when you do the comparison, but I don't see a path to them not just giving Jonathan Taylor so much work that I worry about the 3 for 45 game out of Downs that I don't think we'll get out of Jennings. But sounds like we're all in favor of Thielen, and then it's between Jennings and Downs. I lead Jennings just a little bit. I think we know that it's
Jennings has a higher ceiling for sure. I just think Downs is a much safer play to get like 10, 15 points in a PPR league.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you look at the matchup and see how many points your opponent is projected for and how many you are. And if you're looking like you're probably going to win, I think he's right. Then you go Downs, just go with the floor and get yourself some points. If you're like, I'm like projected to lose by like 15 or 20, maybe you go Jennings and hope he goes off in a super offensive game against the Lions and hope that it's just super high scoring both all around,
Here's the biggest dilemma that Quentin faces is that this is one of those rare matchups where going into today, you haven't seen 9 players go and you don't have a 60-point swing one way or the other. Projections are within 3 points. There's been a total of 4 guys that have played out of both teams. And so, or maybe 5. Yeah. And it's been a mix and match. Going against Kelsey and Hollywood has Charbonnet, who's disappointed. Derrick Henry did well. So there's not enough context at this point to say, all right, yes, I'm definitely looking for the upside play. But
are you guys concerned that if Minnesota loses to Green Bay, Detroit has absolutely nothing to play for against San Francisco? Because if they win week 18, they win the division. If they lose week 18, I'm pretty sure they would still lose the division with a Minnesota, win. I do worry. You got 16 defenders on IR, 22 players. If Detroit knows that this game doesn't matter to them getting the number 1 seed overall, and they just got to take care of business next week, do you take that opportunity to maybe, not give Jamar Gibbs the ball 30 times or, just potentially injure any more of your players? I do have a little concern about that.
I think that's a concern. But if I were to just look at the context of the Detroit Lions, of who they have been, and
doesn't sound very much like them, does it?
It doesn't sound like the Lions. They've been the proverbial, underdogs, disrespected, underappreciated, undervalued, and I think that there's too much pride, literally, I guess, pride of the Lions, if you want to use that. That's perfectly. Yeah, thank you. Perfectly fitting and descriptive of their team. I don't think they would want to do anything short of just coming out and dominating and saying we're here this year. And Dylan's here. He's in the championship, baby. It's full point PPR, different leagues. So sorry for so many questions. It's all right. We got time. Let's start here with the flex. JT, Alexander Madison, Amir Abdullah. Which one of these two Raiders running backs are you going to pivot? I'm going to say, so both are full point PPR. Keep that in mind.
Man, this Raiders Saints game. I mean, what a mess. This game's going to be. For some reason, you're going to get somebody that's going to come through here. To me, I know they've been going a little more Abdullah lately. Madison is just like, he's just not been great. I mean, he did get 12 carries last week. He did get a touchdown. I mean, they did target him a decent amount. Abdullah's looked. I'd probably go Madison, but it's they both had a TD last week. They've been like pretty equal as far as like who's getting as many touches. So it is like you're literally talking about a coin flip for sure. I'd probably go Madison, but I'm not super happy about it. Because I think they're the same guy. So it's just like you're gonna say who gets lucky and gets 1 or 2 more targets and who gets possibly the touchdown near the goal line. It really is a coin flip. I'm going Madison, but there is no really good reason to go Madison over Abdul. I literally think they're the same player.
I'll give you some reasons to go the other way.
Okay, yes. This is what I like to hear.
I love Amir Abdullah in games that since McCormick is not in this offense and Aiden O'Connell is starting, because the last 3 times that has happened, he's caught 17 balls, 138 receiving yards, 74 rushing yards, 3 scores, over 17 points per game. And what I really like is last week he was actually the more effective rusher of the two, of Madison and Abdullah. But he's a PPR cheat code. Like he's like Wan'Dale Robinson. Like it's just guaranteed points. I can't guarantee you, obviously, that he's going to outscore Madison. But I can guarantee you that in games without McCormick and O'Connell starting, he's going to catch 4 passes. So his floor is, 4 points plus whatever he does with those receiving yards, plus, the few, rushing attempts he got. And I mean, it's kind of, again, this is the Raiders, and we saw this with Zimmer White earlier this year. So, but everything shows Abdullah has been the better running back the last 3-4 weeks out of the 2, yet still Madison is slightly seeing more, snaps, carries, etc. But last week it got really close, and I do think it was significant when the game was on the line. It was Abdullah getting rushing attempts, not Madison. But again, because it's a full PPR, 100%, like I think it's Abdullah's the play. Now, if it was not a PPR, Madison gets most of the red, zone work. So I would definitely, be like, I'd probably lean Madison. But again, the PPR, 17 receptions his last 3 games with O'Connell. O'Connell is one of those guys, he throws 3 places. Bowers, running backs, Myers. That's it. And there is one flyer in that game, which is Trey Tucker, just because of the amount of man defense that the Saints run, and Tucker is very good versus man. But I just think Abdullah is a pretty safe play to get you 4 or 5 points when you're looking at, those two guys. He's not going to get you a goose egg. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, Amir Abdullah was he was my smash play on our Fourth and Frames podcast this week. A lot of the same reasons you just mentioned, Keith. The added little wrinkle to that I really like is the fact that usually when you're talking about PPR floor and upside running backs is that you want to look at them when they're on team, when they're trailing and they may have a lot of receiving work just in garbage time or, 2-minute drills, etc. And both of these last 2 games where he's been as effective, where he's had 13 targets for over 100 yards in the 2 games, there've been close games, 15-9 loss against your Falcons and a 19-14 victory against the Jags. So it's not even a game script necessarily completely dependent. And I like that in this matchup because I don't know what game script there's going to be other than I think if there was a script to this game is go have fun maybe, or don't suck so bad.
Why does Brock Bowers have to play with all these losers and play against all these losers? Is that kind of the theme of the game?
Yes, exactly. Why couldn't the championship week be in week 9 when Alvin Kamara was still viable and could have carried,
They make an announcement about Olave because that was something that was very quiet that I've been just extremely intrigued to see if he plays because I thought I saw they were going to take him off IR.
Yeah.
And I just am shocked you would bring somebody
Why?
that exactly.
The last thing
like
I
what
saw
is the
was
point?
that he wasn't playing, but
okay, that
it
makes
wasn't.
sense.
I didn't see it from like an official source. So I would definitely keep an eye on that. But I thought I had heard the rumblings that they were gonna not play him, which to me makes sense. Like, why would you bring him back?
Yeah,
why
it doesn't make
especially
sense.
the head. It's like that's real smart. Meaningless games.
Jorge, here's a tight end question. Ertz or Chig? We talked a lot about Chig last time. Are you going to stay the course?
Yep, staying with Chigakonkwo. Yep.
Then follow through with this wide receiver one because this one hits close to you. Wow, Dylan. Oh, man. Zacchaeus, Cooks, or
hyphenated king.
Westbrook, Kine. I double dare you to say anybody, but Cooks probably. Maybe.
Yeah. So I will say Cooks is my one here. Obviously, the CD Lamb's shut down for the rest of the year. I will say I was looking, as a Commanders fan, I was trying to figure out, like, okay, who's going to be the person to take pressure off Terry McLaurin? Because if teams, just cover him up, like they haven't been able to establish a good receiving option or secondary receiving option. But Zacchaeus did get more targets last week. He was productive last week versus Philadelphia. I'm very excited for this matchup tonight on Sunday Night Football. I think it's going to be quite a good offensive showing for both teams, actually. So I wouldn't, if you wanted to be really ballsy, I would go Zacchaeus. But if you're looking for safe, I'd go Cooks, and the hyphenated king can be laid to rest. So there we go.
I think the word's volume, right? Like with Cooks, you're guaranteed volume. But Joe Matz made a really good point. Eagles have arguably the best corners in football.
Mm-hmm.
And now you don't have CD Lamb to take, one of those best corners. So what are teams going to probably do? Probably be focusing on stopping Brandon Cooks in the passing game. Like I think you have to go with Cooks just because he's the one guy of these 3 that I'd be shocked if he doesn't get 5-6 targets. And you got to have opportunities, right? Like you can't score points if they don't get the ball. But it is, a little concerning that let's see what this Cowboys offense is. Because I've seen a lot of people that are high about a lot of different Cowboys. And I'm like, the Eagles defense is pretty good. And now you're taking away by far their biggest threat on offense, which those guys make a big difference because they just take up so much of the defense's attention on, every single snap.
Let's pivot then to this question as far as defense goes, one of which is the Philadelphia Eagles. The other 2 are the Raiders and the Miami Dolphins. JT, of those 3 defenses, Eagles against Cowboys, Raiders against the Saints, Dolphins,
Browns.
Browns, thank you.
This one to me, a little bit depends on your league, like how they score it. Because I like Miami this week now. Tua's out. I think this is going to be an ugly, ugly game. If it's like if you get a lot of points for low scoring, less points, and you can get a pretty decent amount of points for sacks, I think Miami brings the heat and gets sacks. Me and Jorge talked about on the IDP show, Shoot the Gap, earlier this week, how we both loved all the Miami defensive line. I just think they're going to be all over the Browns. This game is going to be ugly, ugly, ugly. So if you get high end for low scoring and for like sacks, I like Miami. That's my play. I just think that's going to be an ugly, ugly game. Takeaways, if you are higher for takeaways, I would maybe lean Philly there. I think, like you said, with no Lamb, if you got a good shot at getting some picks, even though Cooper Rush has done a really nice job of taking care of the football, Philly would be my number 2. Obviously, Vegas, New Orleans, that game, I feel like who knows what's going to happen there. I mean, that's another one. I just like Miami's defense this week, and I think Miami's going to play it so close to the vest without Tua. Like, I think they're just going to try to run the ball and just try to not turn it over and see if they can squeak out a win. I like this. If you're in a league where you get a ton of points, if you hold a team under 14, like between 7 and 14, I'm taking my shot on Miami, that Miami can shut down the Browns, and that it's just going to be a muck up, everybody pound the rock, and let's not do anything stupid.
So then, Jorge, the next one is Tampa Bay and Buffalo. Definitely not quite as enticing as the other 3. I think I would probably choose any of the other 3 defenses over either of these 2 defenses, but guess what? You don't have that luxury. You have to choose between these 2, and is it Tampa or is it Buffalo?
I'm going to lean Buffalo here. I mean,
Me too.
If Tampa Bay is giving up the most points to, quarterbacks, that's just, imagine how many points they're going to give up to wide receivers this week. So no, thank you. Give me the Buffalo Bills.
40-mile-an-hour winds is making a pretty big deal too. Like, you know what I mean? Like the weather in that Buffalo game, weird shit can happen, and I love that for defenses because let's be honest, a lot of that's random, right? Like, random turnovers, pick sixes, like that's where it's got, and it's just more chaos. I think probably in that Buffalo Jets game due to the weather.
Right on. Good luck, Dylan. Caesar says, good morning. Another tight end question that involves Chig, Zach Ertz,
and
Kraft. Exactly. Keith said it earlier for anybody listening that didn't hear this, is that basically outside of the already played Trey McBride, Travis Kelce, upcoming George Kittle, and Brock Bowers, Chig is his next top option, and I won't disagree with that. So that puts Chig at the top of my list. Does anybody have either of those other 2, Ertz or Kraft, that they would start over Chig?
I just wanted to say real quick, I made a trade like 3 or 4 weeks ago involving Chig, and everybody was like, this guy asked for Chig back in like a random trade offer where I got like a first and Brian Thomas. I think I got a first and Brian Thomas for Chig and Baker Mayfield, and everybody's like, he wants Chig, just throw it in there. Like he's not going to count. Now I'm like, God, I really wish I had Chig to play this week. I never thought I was going to say that like 4 weeks ago when I made this trade. And now I'm like, God, I really wish I had Chig in my lineup because I could have used them this week in the championship. So funny side story, but no, I'm Chig all day in this group.
Well, then I'll let you guys decide between the Colts or the Dolphins. I think we've kind of touched enough on the Dolphins defense as far as the sack upside, lack of offense on the other side of that. Is it still the Dolphins over the Colts? JT, you're the resident Indy fan. Is there any reason why we would choose?
I actually like the Colts this week too. Like I said, this one, if it's points and things, I like the Dolphins depending on where you're going. If it's turnovers, like takeaways get you a bunch of points in your defense, I think the Colts have a high upside of getting maybe a couple interceptions in this game. Here's the thing is I'm a Drew Lock guy. I know it's hard. I'm one of the last ones still out there. I love Drew Lock. He went to Missouri. Great. But he has not been good this year. It's been really ugly. It's been really, really ugly. So is there a chance he throws 2 picks and maybe one of them's a pick 6 today? There's a pretty decent upside that might happen. So, if like I said, I'm looking at my scoring. If scoring doesn't matter, like if you're in one of those leagues where scoring gives you points, because I think this Colts game is going to be really low scoring too. I probably still lean the Dolphins, even though I'm a Colts guy. I probably lean the Dolphins in this game. Just both teams with just terrible QB play. I just lean that direction. But have you guys seen his Neighbors playing? That's a big one for me. If Neighbors plays,
yeah,
I
To
think
me, it
I could
doesn't
see.
matter.
I just think I could see Locke going deep to him a bunch, and if they get down, like
You
I
can't
could
go
see him
deep
chucking
though
up
when you
one.
don't have time. And
Yeah,
like,
no time. That's
once
true. That's true.
Andrew Thomas went out, this Giants offense has turned to shit.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, that's what it is. They
you're
lost
right.
their tackle, and no matter who they put back there, like they don't have time. They've
I
scored
think they're both good plays.
what 36
Exactly. I think I
points
love the Colts and Dolphins this week. To tell
their
you the
last
truth.
3 weeks.
Mhm.
Locks take 8 sacks, turn it over 5 times, and again, I love my Falcons. Y'all know that. I got on my sweatshirt. I'm a big. That's not a great defense. They scored 25 fucking points last week. Okay, like the Giants barely moved the ball. It was one of the worst offenses I've ever watched an entire game of in my life. And again, the big thing is the Falcons, who are one of the worst teams in the league in pressure rate and sacks, were in that backfield on every single passing play because they have no offensive line. It's an absolute mash unit. And I do think that the Colts are definitely going to be up. I have some concerns. I see Chad said in the comment too that like if Tua was playing, this would be so much closer for me because I know the Dolphins would be moving the ball and not putting their defense in bad situations. But with Skylar Thompson, I can't trust that he's not going to say they score 14 points off of Skylar Thompson.
Turnovers.
Right?
Rachel's.
Keith is
let's
talking
go
me
on
into
to.
I love it. I love it.
Let's-
So I do like
let's
the
get to
Dolphins.
some more-
but
Let's get to some more questions. We don't need to discuss this much about the Giants' ineptitude. I think we all know where they're at. Caesar,
Hey, I'm going to be
says-
on a lot of unders today. Let's just say that. A lot of unders
Exactly.
today.
Needs one flex in a PPR league between Tajay Spears, Tyrone Tracy, Drake London, or Jameson Williams. This is my God. This is the type of question that will haunt me if I had to make this because I can see true upside cases for each one. If you listened to Keith last week and you had Tajay Spears, you're no longer in the league anymore. You're out because his Tony Pollard take absolutely destroyed everybody. Good job, Keith. Way to ruin it for everybody. It was wrong.
I was
You were
right.
stupid. You were not right.
I was
They
right.
did not give him 90% of the touches.
Yeah,
Tony
once
Pollard.
the game was over, how did I know the Titans were going to be down that much late? That's my point. It's like if you look at all of Tajay Spears' touches, and that's what I tell people. Yes, was I technically wrong? Absolutely. But if you're going to do this stuff and not kill you, you have to look, was I right with my thesis or was I wrong? My thesis was right. Pollard was getting
your thesis was based around Tennessee winning that game or being competitive.
being competitive.
That in itself was wrong.
Okay.
You should have known better. That was dumb. Don't ever do it again. I'm kidding fully because I started Tony Pollard, rightfully so, when I didn't want to because you made very good points that were true. Unfortunately, you and I both were incorrect in that we thought
They got
Titans
absolutely throttled and they put Tajay Spears in at the end of the game. So
I have to be. I was at the Colts Titans game last week. I have to say that was probably outside of the Steelers game, the most fun Colts game all year. Well, I was in the stands, like people like Colts fans were. It was the most empty I've seen the stadium. Like literally a ton of people around me. I had people hit me up for tickets all the time. I couldn't give away my extra 2 tickets to the last week's game. And then we get there and I'm like, this is the best game we've gone to all year. This has been
is that
super
a Colts
fun.
rushing record?
The JT one?
Yeah.
No, he was just missed it. He just missed it. He had more against the Bills 2 years ago, 3 years ago. He had a monster game against the Bills a couple years ago that I think was over there. And I can't remember what Eric Dickerson's highest total was for the Colts, but it's right up there. It was definitely top 5 games of all time.
I know every time I kept looking down, I'm like, he has how many yards and how many touchdowns?
Yeah. My constant 200 yards, 2+ touchdown bet on JT. Of course, I didn't put in last week when
Jonathan Taylor does have the record though. It's 253 against Jags back in 2020.
Jags. So I knew he had a monster game against the Bills. I knew it wasn't the highest because he had a monster game against the Bills a couple years ago too. So yeah, 253 against the Jags.
I know Haley went and got you one, but I got you breakfast, so I win.
All right.
Somebody's getting breakfast. Oh my goodness!
I know. I got 2
living the
coffees.
dream. This
Where's
guy's
mine?
living the dream.
I'll share with you. If as soon as we answer his question, Caesar doesn't need to hear about
JMO.
You're going JMO?
I'm going JMO. Yep.
I want to say JMO, but I think I'm probably. I was really worried about Michael Penix and Drake London last week. I had my Penix concerns. Keith, have they been alleviated?
They should be. 81% catchable target rate. That was 4th among all QBs in his first sack. He was pressured 9 times. He didn't get sacked once. There's a lot of next-gen stats that show Penix was even better than what the numbers show. I believe in this guy, and London was targeted at a high rate, which he always is. I mean, if you're looking for a boom play, JMO is definitely, I think, the guy. But we've seen it with Jameson that it's like, it's the either or, right? Where he's either going to have a monster game or he's probably going to get you like 10 points, to where London, I think, has scored like 15 or 16 points or more in PPR games. And it's like 12 or 13 games at this point. So I have a hard time sitting somebody that I know is going to get me like 12 to 16 points. And obviously he could score 20 or more. You just have to worry about JMO doing what he did last week, where he has 4 catches for 150 yards and a touchdown.
I see. For me, I lean London, but I'm in a couple huge bonus leagues where like long touchdowns are like monster points. If that's the scoring in this league, then I'm taking JMO. I'm taking the upside that he gets me a long 40 or 50 yard touchdown with like a 5 or 6 point bonus on the long ones. So that's where I would be. If it's just a regular league, like no bonus for long plays, I'm playing probably the floor that is London. That's probably my lean.
Yeah, I think I lean London as well, even though I want to say JMO because he's on so many of my teams, but I think that
in the second half of that question, he said, "Are you worried about JT or A-Chain because of the QB play?" I'm a little more worried about him, but like I don't know that these teams aren't just going to feed those guys. So I guess I'm leaning into those guys probably hard this week. To be honest with you, I'm sticking with them.
Yeah, JT, I'm definitely sticking with more. A-Chain, I worried just a tad because it was the fact that they can't get much going on the ground, that they've been all through the air, and I just hope that the change in
I'm just
quarterback
hoping volume, and I guess for A-Chain, my hope would be that he gets enough touches that he eventually just breaks one. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be pretty by any means, but he's got that speed to break one deep. You hope you give him just enough carries that he gets one and takes one to the house.
Yeah. In a Dynasty Superflex, this is a 4-point passing
Will.
touchdown.
What's our guy, Will? How you doing? Will, also, thanks for jumping. He did say Olave was out. Will confirmed Olave officially out in the chat.
Okay.
Thank you, Will.
I don't know why in the world Olave would have played. If Carr might have come back, maybe they would have been more inclined. But either way, Jorge, 4-point passing touchdown.
Yeah.
Who would you rather have? JJ or Tua? In Dynasty.
In Dynasty, yeah. No, I am, as a Tua manager, I am like, one of my objectives for the offseason is to find a way to get him off of my roster and to get a younger quarterback, because this guy, I can't with this guy.
How much Tua do you have? Do you have a lot of? I have a ton of Tua. I have an absolute ton of Tua in Dynasty. It's killing me.
Just one league with them, and I want off the train. I'd rather have JJ McCarthy to answer the question. Well, so that's where I'm going with there. Okay.
I like that.
All right.
So much Tua.
TK the Brewer, his lineup has been wrecked this week. He needs 2. We're probably shooting for some upside. Calvin Ridley, Devontae Smith, Adam Thielen, Khalil Shakir. I mean, everyone, unfortunately.
Are we all sticking with Thielen, right? We're sticking with Thielen, right? I think
I'm sticking with Thielen.
Yeah,
is what we've the next one. So on Thursday night, Devontae Smith was one of my fades, just simply because Kenny Pickett, the volume that we saw to AJ Brown, and the usage of Saquon in this matchup that should be easily exploitable on the ground, has me concerned that Devontae Smith gives me that, 3 for 35 game because he's not needed. Is there likelihood? Is there a possibility? Sure, that he has that, 6 catch, 100-yard game and a touchdown. Of course it is. It's Devontae Smith. It's the Eagles. It's the much better, point total potential than what we see in Tennessee. But it's also Kenny Pickett, not Jalen Hurts, and that to me does bring a little bit of doubt and uncertainty. So I go Thielen, and I want to say Ridley, but I don't want to because it's still Mason Rudolph. For every reason I gave against Devontae Smith, well, how dare I say anything positive when it's Mason Rudolph? I'll go Thielen like you guys. I want one of your number twos. Maybe make a decision.
I think I'm going Ridley. Here's the thing is, and this might be me wish casting. I can't even explain to you how many championship games I'm in right now, or third place games, where I'm starting Mason Rudolph as my second QB. It's insanity. It's real bad. But I actually think Rudolph's, while he's not a good quarterback, I think he's serviceable, at least for fantasy purposes. And the Jags secondary has not been good this year.
No, horrendous
at all. I think he can make some plays. Is he going to maybe throw 2 picks? That's definitely a possibility, but I also think he's going to make some plays. Tyler Boyd, foot injury. He's been a mess. I think it's Chig and Ridley today. I think he just hammers those guys. So I'm going upside of Ridley and Thielen. I'm leaning there. And my, as a Steelers fan, my Kenny Pickett, PTSD just cannot let me take Devontae Smith at this point.
Well, Spencer has a question for you, Jorge. I have a flex spot here. Amir Abdullah, Jaden Reed, or Raheem Blackshear.
I'm going Amir Abdullah. We talked about him earlier, the PPR upside. Last week, he got fewer carries than Madison, but I believe he had 5.1 yards per carry, something along that lines.
5.4.
So 5.4. Thank you. Far more efficient running the ball. Jaden Reed, you don't know what you're getting week after week. We all wished, or we're hoping to wish into existence, he'd be the alpha of this wide receiver core heading into this year. You look at the target breakdowns, I feel like they're fairly comparable amongst the top 3 wide receivers for Green Bay. And Raheem Blackshear, was he Oklahoma State a few years ago, drafted by the Carolina Panthers? I'm not putting my eggs in Raheem Blackshear championship week. It's for me, it's Amir Abdullah.
This is the week 17 that unfortunately some of us thought we would see, none of us wanted, is the Amir Abdullah Raheem Blackshear decision between those names coming up. But it follows right into this next one, JT.
Yeah.
Blackshear ETN. I mean, do you go?
I'm just glad I'm not the only person sitting here just making ridiculous decisions between guys I never thought I'd have to play, especially in a championship. So I'm not the only one. Blackshear ETN. Oh, I tell you what, the Chuba Hubbard news absolutely buried me in multiple leagues. I'm having to pull out a Tank Bigsby today. It was Tank Bigsby or Ray Davis. I'm having to pull out Tank Bigsby. I'm probably going ETN here. Not that I love it, and I'm not confident at all, but I have to go with a guy that against the team that just gave up 200 yards and multiple touchdowns. I got it. I don't know if he gets all the carries. I think Bigsby's going to actually mix in there, but Blackshear, I'm just nervous the first time. You know what I'm saying? Him first start, I would rather go ETN.
And ETN hasn't had fewer than 3 targets, and it's dating back to week 10. So even if anything, you think 2 to 3 to maybe 4 catches is kind of a solid floor.
I think he has a shot. I mean, we just saw what the Colts, who really struggled on offense, did against the Titans. They ran rumshaw off. To me, I feel like Blackshear over him is overthinking it. Even though ETN has not been what we've wanted this year, I still think that's just overthinking it.
I agree. I think it's the next man up. Hey, Dave, good morning.
Fellas, what's going on?
Well, we jump right in. Jorge, do you want this? You want Dave to take it?
Dave, why don't you take this one? Breece Hall or Brian Robinson
Thielen or McMillan?
I'm guessing that's Thielen.
Thielen, yep, or Jalen McMillan.
I mean, Breece Hall, I think, is pretty obvious. This is a don't get too cute moment. You got to play Breece Hall. Yeah, I know he's been a little bit, up and down, but I'd rather the volume of Breece Hall, especially with Rodgers, trying to get his 500th touchdown. I think, he's going to be showcasing what he can do. I like Thielen. Thielen's really been operating as that number one guy. I'm really liking Bryce Young. He's starting to look like the Bryce Young that we thought he was going to be. Thielen's his guy that he looks for in the slot, on the edge. Yeah, give me Thielen and Breece Hall.
I think I'm in agreement with that too. Even though I have started to come around on Jalen McMillan a little bit, Jorge.
Yeah, I was going to say, that is a tougher, that is a closer margin here, Thielen or McMillan. I really do like Jalen McMillan, just his usage over the past few weeks. But I think I'm in agreement. Breece Hall and Adam Thielen just on targets and attempts. Brian Robinson put the ball on the ground twice last week, lost both of them. The coaching staff immediately pulled him from most of the game. I had him in a few leagues, and it took until 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter to him to get back to 0 points, as opposed, from the negative points he accumulated from the turnovers. So, no thanks, Breece Hall for me. George
poses a really interesting question that I think is one that we have to look at because of the change at quarterback. In a full point PPR, as good as Jonnu's been, do you keep him or do you look to sub out for someone like Brenton Strange or Durham? I feel like I still keep Jonnu in myself, but I know the Brenton Strange fans are out there, and even though he had an off week last week, the volume had been there prior. What, JT? I'll start with you.
I think I stick with Jonnu. I mean, if anything, Skylar Thompson's going to have to be dropping the ball off constantly, and Jonnu's going to be the guy there. No, with the whole issues with Waddle, Tyreek, everything else, I'm sticking with Jonnu. I could see this just being an absolute ugly game, like I said earlier, but I could see Jonnu still getting 8 catches for 65 yards. You know what I'm saying? Or it's 60, him just dumping it off to him. So if it's PPR, especially, I think that I have to just on a personal note say, I love the Payne Durham references. I have Payne Durham all over the place. I love them at Purdue. I've got him on a million taxi squads, and all of a sudden the fact that he's possibly playable in Dynasty and Fantasy Championships is just, it makes my heart just a little happy. I just like Payne Durham. I don't know if he's going to be good today. I'm playing him in a couple spots. But I like him. He's a guy I like. So I do like Payne Durham. I'm sticking with Jonnu, even with the quarterback change. To me, I feel like Jonnu might be the safest play if you're going to play anybody on the Dolphins today outside of A-Chain. I think Jonnu might be the guy you want.
Yeah. When Tua was out for a good chunk of the season, weeks 5 through 8, we've seen Jonnu with Skylar Thompson, I believe, was the quarterback. 8 targets, 7 targets, 6 targets. I think Jonnu is the safer play here, even with Skylar Thompson as a quarterback.
There you have it.
And backup quarterbacks always tend to target tight ends. I don't know what it is, but it just seems to be the safe play. So I can see Jonnu getting 6 or 7 catches.
Yeah, and you think as a backup quarterback, it's the chaos of everything in front of you when your focus is on a short to intermediate and a 6'3", 6'4" target. Just, I don't know. It seems calming and easier. But this was the question from earlier. Jorge Robert had said between Breece and Brian Robinson, and then Thielen or Jalen McMillan. So we said Breece Hall on this one. $1 bill, Raheem Blackshear, Olamide Zacchaeus, or Kendre Miller in the flex. This question is the epitome of fucking gross, but he's in the championship, which means he's made good decisions all year.
I actually feel like I have a worse option than this one in one of my leagues, but this is pretty bad.
So, I mean,
I'm going to go Blackshear on this one. Look, we saw Kendre Miller's ability last week. I was not impressed. I mean, he's not a 3-down back. And let's be honest, are we expecting the Saints to be up by 2 touchdowns where they're just pounding the rock? Probably not. So, look, I'm not saying, Blackshear over Saquon Barkley. Don't get me wrong. But just saying out of these guys, I think he's probably the better chance to get 15 touches, right?
I don't know that. I'm going to eliminate last week a little bit, even though I've been so anti Kendre Miller going into the season, partially because I liked Alvin Kamara so much in the year, more so than the hate towards Kendre. But that Packers game never even got started for New Orleans. They couldn't get a first down to save their life, thus eliminating Kendre Miller, and that's partially on his shoulders. I don't see Vegas as the same, but I do worry about Kendre. I might lean. Jorge, I want to hear your take. You talked earlier about Zacchaeus.
I'm going with Zacchaeus. The Falcons offer the most favorable matchup for wide receivers. We saw him get, targeted more by Jaden Daniels last week. God forbid they found a secondary receiving option to take the pressure off of Terry McLaurin. So full PPR, yep, I'm going Zacchaeus, which should be a good matchup for the Commanders against the Falcons on Sunday Night Football.
So we have a Zacchaeus, we have a Blackshear. I think those are the 1 and 2 options. I think I'll still put Kendre third. But JT, unless you're saying Kendre?
I might be crazy. I like Jordan Mims better than Kendre Miller, to be honest with you. I think Jordan Mims is a better running back. I wouldn't play either of them. So that's I'm out on Kendre for sure. I like the high upside as Zacchaeus. I agree with Jorge there. Though, if I just need floor, I'm looking for some touches. I could lean Blackshear there if I'm just like, hey, I just need something out of him. But I think if you're looking for the highest upside play, I think Zacchaeus is the highest upside.
There you go. So, yeah, if you're shooting for, you just want to make sure you get 5 points in and otherwise was going to be meaningless because this is the spot that you had. You had to take out Chuba Hubbard last minute and all of a sudden you need to fill it with, give yourself at least 5 to 7 points. There you go, Blackshear. If you're looking for touchdown, 13 plus, I think Zacchaeus is that one there. So Red Hood M24, good morning. Full point PPR, Dave. You're picking 1 wide receiver and you're picking 1 flex. Let's start with the wide receivers between Jalen McMillan and Malik Neighbors.
That's obvious. We're going Neighbors. Let's not get too cute here. And look, Tyrone Tracy, he's been great all year. I don't see why he's going to stop. And we saw how he operated even last week as a wide receiver. I mean, that touchdown catch he got was incredible. So you're getting volume out of Tracy, and Neighbors is too talented to bench.
So Neighbors, assuming he doesn't have any tag like injury where because he ruled himself a game time decision, and then he's gotten more practice time since. And so I'm happy to agree that Neighbors is just too safe of it's too risky to not start. Jorge, JT, do either one of you guys ultimately, do you lean McMillan over Neighbors?
I do. I just can't ignore what they've done, what he's been able to do with Baker Mayfield last week. We look at the Dallas game. McMillan was just hyper targeted again. No KDOT in this week. Just even more reason to feature him a little bit more. Yeah, so I'm definitely going McMillan and Neighbors this week.
Interesting. Oh, so you're saying you're starting either both of those two, even one wide receiver, then one of the flex over Tyrone Tracy. My mistake.
Correct.
I thought you were ultimately just saying Jalen McMillan over Neighbors, and then you were going to go with Tracy.
So the flex would be McMillan, the wide receiver would be Neighbors for me.
There you go. Okay, gotcha.
Is Tracy the waiver pickup of the year? Who are we voting for the waiver pickup of the year?
Well, in some leagues, Chase Brown was a waiver wire addition.
I feel like he was mainly drafted. I feel like he was a very late round draft, generally speaking.
Yes, that is true. I do agree. I find that he was when Zach Moss was starting to take over, there was a lot of concerns with Chase, but that's not what you mean by waiver wire. And I know that. So I have to trust it. You know, the guy that was available out there in every league, and Tyrone Tracy would probably be a pretty good one to go off of. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that I really would be like, man. I mean, some of the guys we're naming right now, the best waiver wire pickup is the one that you play that wins you a championship, I guess. But getting to the championship is the part that has more value. Is that
Bucky Irving's a good point. He makes a good point. I saw that.
Oh, that's before. A good call. Oh yeah,
that's a good call.
The next one
that's
by Mr.
probably
Sam Darnold
for sure.
Yeah,
both of those really good. Rachel has a good question here that I think we can take a minute to discuss. She says, "What are your favorite New Year's resolutions?"
Stop drafting Justin Herbert. That's mine. Been drafting him for way too many years. He let me down all year. And the moment I bench him in one of my finals, he goes off yesterday. But it happens, right?
Yeah, it does. What is a New Year? So, what are you going to take into next year that, you feel like you could have done differently? I will say myself is I'm going to try to be more organized and not overwhelm myself with data dumps too late, and maybe try to find a good strategy to look at some of the games that were played that I want to focus on, not just take all the data from, without context, and not then try to put everything together on Thursday morning for a show or Sunday morning scramble and feel overwhelmed, and take, absorb all the information so that I can have a coherent conversation about everything without trying to just data dump out of my mouth that I just read and regurgitated from 20 minutes ago.
I would say one thing is I find, because we're looking at numbers and stuff all day, we end up having our guys, our sleepers that we've got to draft, and you end up talking about them all off season, and then you hit the draft. I tend to overdraft them a little bit because I'm like, hey, I've been talking about this guy all off season. Yeah, I know he's a 13th round pick, but it's 10th round. I'm just going to grab him. And sometimes you look at your draft and go, oh, man, I could have got Brock Bowers, and then the next round got that guy, instead of just reaching too much. That's one thing I find, that overanalyzing, you end up just, really thinking too hard about one pick, and then and then you end up overdrafting, and you have a squad of overdrafted players, right?
It's true. That's true. All right, Jorge, let's get it.
Yeah. So mine would be less addicted to watching Red Zone and be more into watching full games as best as possible, or condensed games, because I think you're right, Nate. I think it's very easy to get lost in the data dumps and the researching and every single metric and new metric that comes out every year, and you're trying to separate yourself from like, oh well, I know this for content purposes, or I know this because this is a extra thing to support or negate my argument, all of which has some value. Obviously, I mean obviously it has value, but I think without the context, without actually like watching the games and seeing what's actually going on, being more of a film quote unquote person, definitely would go a long way into just getting a better perspective of what's actually going on and how you can then take those numbers and kind of apply them a little bit better to analysis.
You know what? I'm going to summarize everything, and I'm going to make one. I'm going to continue. It's not a New Year resolution where I'm going to change anything, but I'm going to continue to not be a douchebag. That's a resolution that I'm going to do, because I can tell you right now, I hate such a high percentage of so many people who have take lock on social media, where if they're wrong, it's never because shit happens. You never know. It's, well, my process was 100% right, which is true. You should follow the process. But there's so many that refuse to even like
Knowledge.
acknowledge something could be that when you're like guaranteed on one specific point, have some flexibility. I know when I'm wrong. I admit when I'm wrong. Happens a lot. Maybe that's why I admit doing a lot of wrong admittance. But I admit we should get to the next question because I want to answer everybody's questions. And Oscar has a full PPR flex question in Rachaad White or Garendo. You want to start here, Jorge?
Yeah. So, I mean, Rachaad White coming off of that, costly turnover of to end the Dallas game last week, but Bucky Irving has looked just phenomenal. I forget who said he was the waiver wire pickup of the year. I think Will said earlier, like absolutely. I think Bucky Irving, given how favorable this matchup is for Tampa Bay in terms of running backs versus Carolina, I think you see more Bucky than White this week. So I'm going to go Garendo.
Dave, any?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I didn't like what I saw from Patrick Taylor last week. And it's obvious Garendo can be a 3-down back. We saw that the week prior where he got 2 touchdowns, bunch of long runs. He can catch the ball. Yeah, he's the guy who's going to get 15-plus touches, right? And yeah, to the point that's obvious, Bucky Irving, he's the talent in that backfield. Rachaad White, even on paper, he might be the starter. He's not the starter. He's the backup. Not a bad backup, but I don't think you get volume out of Rachaad White today. I think you're relying on him falling in the end zone.
See, and that's the thing. I don't when I have Rachaad White, I don't look at touchdowns as being any support for his ability, because shockingly in his at least running into the end zone, his biggest performances have been on the heels of his passing work for the most part. And that's the only bank that I can trust in, is that he's going to see enough receiving work. I hope. We saw the lull in weeks 12, 13, and 14, even week 15, but last week, 8 targets, 7 catches. Carolina is the worst matchup on paper, or the best matchup on paper for opposing running backs. It's close. I slightly lean Rachaad White, but at the same time, would I be shocked if it's completely Bucky Irving and he just absolutely dominates and Rachaad White after back-to-back games with the fumble doesn't touch the ball? Yes. So the concern for me is Rachaad White doesn't have anything, but I still think I feel more comfortable with Rachaad White giving me that what I need performance, especially in a full point PPR, that is. But Garendo gets the 2-1 vote in this one for you, Oscar. George, last one. Dave, he wants to know, is Kenny Pickett a better option than Aiden O'Connell?
I don't mind O'Connell, man. He's slinging the rock, and that's what you want out of your quarterback, right? Mm-hmm. Kenny Pickett has a very low floor. I think last week was an outlier because that was a rare shootout. I don't know if we're going to emulate that again today. As crazy as it sounds, I think I'm trusting Aiden O'Connell more.
I'm with you on that. I'm on O'Connell. I think O'Connell over Pickett. I've got a bunch of these decisions in my leagues. Like I'm looking at Drew Lock, Aiden O'Connell, Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett as a second QB in leagues that I've just got decimated. O'Connell to me is, while Pickett has more talent around him, I think O'Connell understands his team. He's going to get Bowers the ball. Saints haven't been shut down at all. I like the idea of O'Connell being able to put together a pretty solid game. I think the Eagles are going to do everything they can not to put Kenny Pickett in a position to lose them this game. So I think O'Connell has a higher upside for sure.
And you got Jacoby Myers and Tucker. I mean, they're not bad. I'm not saying they're elite, but they're good enough that O'Connell's going to be looking for them. And obviously,
and they're a team that's not going to rely on the run. We know that the Raiders aren't going to rely on the run. They're just not. I mean, their running game is dumping the ball off to the running backs out of the backfield, where the Eagles are going to pound the rock. So I'm on O'Connell for sure.
Well, especially with Saquon approaching that record,
absolutely.
if they get a decent lead, I think they just give Saquon the rock, and they're just going to let him get that record.
All right, let's get to Brandon's question here. He says, Jameson Williams or Devonta Smith need one PPR. He's already starting Gibbs and Amon-Ra. I'd say you make a clean sweep. All Lions, put them in there. I like it. Kenny Pickett. We were talking about earlier in the show, just hyper targeting AJ Brown. You know, how many wide receivers can he really support? I think it's basically your target, your AJ Brown and your Saquon Barkley are the plays there for Philadelphia this week. So give me JMO. Either of you disagree?
I'm
No,
single. Yep, hammer the Rams. Hammer the Lions. I'm going to go all out on the Lions on this one.
I mean, Jameson Williams, we saw what he can do last week. He's just one big play away from an 80-yard touchdown to save your fantasy day, and he does that more often than not, to be honest. Whereas Devontae Smith, man, look, set aside the fact that he cost the Eagles a win last week, he's not been a real threat this year at all. I mean, maybe he's had one or two big games, but nothing that makes you want to rely on him in your fantasy final, right?
Right. Oscar here. I believe he had the same question. So we already answered his question. Correndo and White at flex. So we'll get to the second question. Wide receiver 2, Downs or McMillan? I like McMillan. Does anybody else disagree? Downs dealing with Flacco being that's the thing.
I think the floor is Downs. Like if you just need some points, I like Downs because I think he's going to get a decent amount of catches. I don't know what they're going to be for very many yards, and I don't know if you're going to actually get a touchdown out of them. But I like Downs for the floor. McMillan, I think, is the home run hit. Like, we've seen it with him. He can catch, deep balls for a touchdown. Obviously, they're going to try to get Mike Evans involved as much as possible. You got to see that the Panthers are assuming that they're going to go to Evans a lot. So I think it opens up things for McMillan a little bit. So I think the floor play is Downs. I think if you're looking for the huge hit, especially if you play Rashad White, I'm saying go Downs. If you play Garriendo, I'm saying go Garriendo and McMillan.
And let's think about this. The Buccaneers need this victory. If they
Bucs need it bad, and this they've been offensive all year. They've passed the ball like the Panthers' defense is beat up. This should be. I tell you what, this should be kind of a shootout, I would assume. I mean, when they played each other earlier this year, it was. So I think this game could be high scoring. Out of all the games this week, I think there's a ton of bad games. I'm taking unders. This might be one of the highest scoring games all week, I think.
Here's what. Go ahead, don't worry.
I was going to say with the Bucs here, if they win, that puts a lot of pressure on Atlanta because they're both basically flip-flopping between division leads here. And so I would expect Tampa Bay to put the pedal to the metal and just unleash with everything they got.
I wouldn't be shocked to see them actually at least try to, without foregoing the game plan and focus on winning, is Mike Evans is still chasing 1,000 yards. I know that that's not their focus, but at the end of the day, Baker, he kind of gives me that thought that he's a player's quarterback where he will do his best to feed Mike Evans and get him as many yards because it's also productive to the team too. It's not force feeding a lesser target, known player or less upside play. I know that's going against the grain a little bit in terms of process, but I wouldn't be shocked in the least if that was the case.
There we got an IDP question from Summer. Quick question: Zach Seiler, Zach Seiler or Greg Rousseau at DL need a 2-sack upside if possible. Dan Henley killed you yesterday. Dan Henley killed a lot of people yesterday. What did he get? Like 0 tackles, I think was the official stat.
Brutal for IDP people. Ouch.
Yeah. So for me, it's I don't know if you're getting 2-sack upside, but I think the better play is Seiler here. Just the pressure rate has been very consistent the past 5 weeks. He's led all Dolphins in sacks. You look at tackles for losses, sacks, solo tackles. Quarterback hits. He's been in the top 10 defensive linemen overall in each of these categories the past 5 weeks. Greg Rousseau, probably lining up against Morgan Moses, who hasn't a sack in the past 5 weeks. Been very good with not having any pressures allowed. Rousseau is actually one of my fades this week, and Siler one of my plays, so I'm going to stay consistent and go with that.
I 100% back what Jorge said. Go Siler. He definitely has the 2 sack upside. Browns cannot protect the quarterback at all, and I don't. Even though I love Rousseau and I've got him in a ton of leagues, he is a sit for me this week. If I got anybody else, I'm playing him over him.
All right. Got a question from Caesar. Alec Pierce or Kendra Miller?
I'll take this one. Alec Pierce for the Colts. You're literally playing the home run hit here because Pierce isn't going to get 4 or 5 catches, but you're hoping he gets one deep one. They get Flacco down the lane. There's a good chance he scores you a 0. He gets nothing, but I am playing the upside of Pierce over Miller. I just think Miller has such a low floor. I just don't think you're going to get a lot out of him. I'm playing Pierce. I just think he could win you a week. Could he get you 0? Absolutely. He could get you a 0 this week, but he also could get a deep bomb for a touchdown. I like Pierce. I like Pierce more when AR plays, but Flacco still's got a cannon. He can still get it downfield, so I like Alec Pierce.
Keep in mind they still have Jamal Williams and Mims, right? So I don't think Miller he's getting 20 touches. I think they're just spreading the rock. They do? I didn't know that.
Yeah, they just signed CH. And then, like I said, in the earlier question, I actually like Jordan Mims better than Kendre Miller. So if they end up getting to 3rd down possessions and they have to pass the ball, I actually think you see more Mims than you see Miller in that situation.
All right. I got
an ethical conundrum for you guys, right? I mean, one of my leagues, I'm in the loser league champion, right? It's still money to win. I think it's $500, right? Oh. But the championship game guy had Chuba Hubbard. And as soon as I got the notice about Chuba being out, I grabbed Blackshear, and I'm not even playing him. I sat him on my bench. Was I wrong for that?
No,
absolutely not.
You're playing for...
This guy has to deal with Tyler Algier now.
I think. See, my thing is like I'm in leagues where they say, "Hey, once you get knocked out of the playoffs, wherever, you can't pick anybody up or anything." But my thing is like, if there's money on the line or draft picks on the line, I'm in a bunch of toilet bowl championships where like I just barely missed the playoffs and I'm fighting through for an extra draft pick or extra money in the toilet bowl. As long as you're telling me I'm still playing, I'm making moves. Like I'm picking guys up. Like to me, unless it's like a redraft league where there is no prize or anything for the toilet bowl, and you say, "Hey, once you're knocked out, like don't pick any players up because you can't get anything." I understand that rule, but like if you're telling me there's something to play for, I'm setting lineups and picking guys up till the very end. Like that's just me. That's the way I play fantasy football.
Yep, 100% agree. All right, we got a last question here from Oscar. Thanks, guys. Championship game. Wide receiver 2 wouldn't have Downs in with Flacco back or McMillan. So again, last question.
It's the one I just talked about a little bit. I think Downs is the nice floor play. I think you're going to get points out of him. I think if you're going for a big hit, I think McMillan in what is I would think be a more offensive game. I think the chances of a lot more points. McMillan would be my play as far as like if you need points, he would be the guy I'm going at. Downs, I playing Downs everywhere, so I'm saying not saying I don't like Downs because I do. I just think McMillan has a chance to have a bigger game overall. Just the fact that I think it's gonna be fairly close. I think both those teams are gonna score a lot. Where on the opposite, I think the Colts Giants game is gonna be ugly. I think it's gonna be real ugly.
Yeah, I do. I want to make one little thing real quick, Jorge, is that Mr. Scampers disagree. The don't be a douchebag is the favorite resolution. That should be the 11th commandment. It should probably be the one right between don't bang your neighbor's wife and don't kill somebody. Somewhere between there. It's like, don't kill anybody. Don't be a douchebag. don't bang your neighbor's wife or husband or whatever. I mean, you shouldn't, but when in Rome. Just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I love my wife. She knows I'm only joking.
Oh my god.
Hey, I've got why we don't have a question just sitting here waiting. I got a little conundrum for you guys. This might be the ugliest decision I've ever had to make in a fantasy championship week. Chuba going out last second here gave me almost no options. We're literally neck and neck in this championship game. I've got to have a flex play. This is don't puke, please. Jamison Crowder, Jordan Mims, Kenneth Gainwell, or Kylan Granson.
Oh my god.
I know it's disgustingly nasty. And this is like gonna be the guy that ends up making or breaking for me. I know, because I'm like, we're literally like neck and neck to win this thing. God, who would you go with? Because the problem is a bunch of guys I would have probably already played, and I didn't know that Chuba was gonna be out. So like the other guys on my bench have already played. Give me some advice, guys.
I'm going Crowder. I think I'm going Crowder.
I'm kind of leaning Crowder. I just want to know if I'm crazy. I'm kind of leaning. I'm either leaning in my mind. I'm leaning Crowder or Kenneth Gainwell, in the fact that they do not want Kenny Pickett throwing the ball a bunch. Barkley gets a bunch of carries. If they end up getting up, maybe Gainwell gets a bunch of garbage time. That's my two thoughts. So I'm kind of leaning Crowder or Kenny Gainwell. What do you guys think?
I'm leaving Gainwell. You've seen him being incorporated more into the offense as the past few weeks have gone on. And to your point, if they get up on the Cowboys, I think you're going to see a lot more out of Gainwell towards the end of the game.
I also have Barkley, if this means anything to you. So I'm also kind of thinking injury concern. If something happens to Barkley, do I play Gainwell too, in case he ends up getting a bunch of carries in case of a Barkley injury, or they just roll and I get both of them a bunch of points? Just wanted to throw that out there.
I think you just gave yourself the right answer right there.
Does Philly want Barkley to overtake Eric Dickerson? That's the question. Do they care enough about records while still, going to the playoffs? Because he needs to average 134. Can he do that in the first half of the game? Absolutely. It wouldn't shock me in the least. And then Kenneth Gainwell takes over. These are narratives that I know shouldn't have to go into the play because everybody wants to say the team's going to always want to win, but they do. Yep. These little things are, motivators, and it's good for the city and the team context and money. Believe it or not, I think will motivate the Eagles to get Saquon, because they would love to have their logo attached to the all-time rushing leader. No matter what that means on the season, if resting Saquon next week makes sense or not risking injury, there's sometimes those weird overarching decisions.
Well, and the weird thing too is they're still fighting for the number 1 seed with Detroit, right? So it's like they still have stuff to play for. So it's not like they can just be like, yeah, well, we wanted to rest some guys and do some stuff. And, I would think Saquon, he feels like the guy that would want to stick it to the Giants here and get like, you guys weren't 100% sure you wanted to sign me. Now I'm going to set the NFL rushing record. When you let me go? I mean, and also, I mean, you're playing the hated Cowboys on top of that. Like, I feel like he's going to have a big game. I really do. But I just throw this in here. If you're a long shot better, here's my long shot bet of the day. JT, Jonathan Taylor, 2 touchdowns. Saquon Barkley, 2 touchdowns. Bijan Robinson, 2 touchdowns. 3-pick parlay, 2 touchdowns, all 3 of those guys. Monster odds. That's my Hail Mary throw out there if you want to throw $10 on it. Bet of the day.
What was that? JT, Saquon, and Bijan, you said?
Yep.
I can't. I live in stupid Missouri, who doesn't let us bet on things like that yet.
I mean, I'm right next to you, and every time I go to, I tell you people this all the time. It's like every time I go to St. Louis, I got to remind myself that I have to put the bet in before I go across the river, because I'm like, I can't believe that Missouri doesn't have sports gambling. Blows my mind. Next year.
There you go.
it passed.
Well, I think
So
Oh, did it
Yes,
pass? I know. I knew a bunch of friends that were like, "Oh, it's going to be close."
it
I
was
never
close.
heard if it did pass.
Yep,
It did
like
pass.
51-49, I believe.
Oh, nice. A win for
I
the
saw
gamblers.
something about there was like a turn off heading into Kansas City where people just pull over on the shoulder to put their bets and then
Oh,
just
absolutely.
turn around.
So before Illinois, before Indiana, I should say, passed sports gambling. I live in Illinois, so we're like, hey, we don't care. We gambling everything. They're like, sure, we're broke state. Like, well, anything we can to make money. So when we used to drive to Colts games, there was an exit right before we got to Indiana, and all the guys would pull off and put in their bets before we crossed the border to go in Indiana on Sunday for Colts games because we couldn't put any bets in once we got to Indiana. Luckily, Indiana wised up and they passed the sports gambling law, but that was what we used to do. Everybody would pull over. I remember one time we missed it. I got a text and the guy's like, "Hey, turn around. We're going back the exit. I forgot to enter my bet before we crossed the state border." But I don't know if that says more about me and my friends than anything else. But yeah, so that does happen. That is a reality.
Well,
okay. Well, what a season, man, guys! We've been doing this for 17 weeks, and it all comes ahead today. And everybody who's listening and watching and been watching all season long, we really appreciate it. It's been fun doing the kickoff show with all you gentlemen and everybody in the chats. A little surreal, this is the last show of the year, and just want to give a shout out to everybody who's, like I said, who's been supporting here, everybody at Fantasy and Frames, all of our shows, all of our articles, checking out our rankings, just subscribing to the channel, following us across all our social media platforms. Just couldn't have done it without you. Really, you all are the reason why we do this, and we really appreciate you all your support. But we are going to be doing still our DFS content throughout the rest of the playoffs. Keith and the Daily Fix crew on Fridays at 9 p.m. We'll still have his playbook article coming out weekly through the Super Bowl. We're going to have for some of our podcast shows, we're going to have like a year in review special for each of them. I think Fourth and Frames is planning one. I know Shoot the Gap is going to be doing that also. So, and then, come 2025, we're going to be into prospect evals and free agency and NFL draft. And, next thing you know, before you know it, we're right back here week 17 in 2025. So definitely appreciate you all. Thank you very much. We do have one more question before we get going here. He says, Indy versus Giants or Eagles versus Cowboys? I'm assuming this is a DST question, but if we're talking, I would go Indy and I would go Philly.
Yeah,
No,
or I think he's asking which one would you take?
Yeah.
Like
I
I'm
think
going
it's
Indy.
or Eagles.
The Colts
I'm going
or
Indy
the Eagles.
defense.
Oh,
Yeah, but Indy's defense. I think it's going to be Giants have been a mess. It's going to be a little scoring. You're hoping you get some sacks if it's a DTS league. Like you're hoping sacks kind of a lot. I think Indy has a shot to get quite a few sacks. I'm going to be on a Quiddy Pay sack prop today for sure. And you're hoping that maybe Kenny Moore gets you another pick. He 2 last week, maybe gets a pick 6 tonight. I like that. I'm going Indy. I just think the Cowboys, even though I like the Eagles defense, I think the Cowboys offense is a lot better than the Giants, even without CD.
All right. Well,
Anything
good luck with everything.
Let's see here. Ken says you guys are the best. Thank you very much, Ken. Anything you guys want to impart to the viewers before we head out of here?
I was going to say my New Year's resolution for fantasy. I didn't answer that one. Stick with my process. The guys I like, don't trade them away just because people are like, oh, that other one's better value. I burned myself on a couple trades where I traded away Brian Thomas, and I loved him in the offseason. I wanted to draft him everywhere. It was early on. People were like, oh, no, better value, make this trade. And I'm like, still kicking myself. And I'm like, no, he's going to be a stud. He's going to be a stud. And I probably traded in about 4 weeks too early. So my thing is like, give guys time. Let them keep going. Just because someone says that, or the trade, calculator tells you that it's a better value, I'm going to stick with my gut and take the guys I like, even if I feel like I'm losing in that battle. Don't always got to win the trade. Sometimes, go with your guys and do it. I always feel better when I do that, because when I go with the trade calculator, or I go with the, what everybody says is like, oh, you should make the value trade there. And then I'm always kicking myself later. Like, I should have just believed in what I already thought. And then I'm mad about it. Whereas, like, if I go with my guy and he ends up blowing up and I screw it up, at least I feel better that I went with who I liked and who I thought was the guy, and I screwed it up myself, as opposed to like listening to everybody else. So that's my thing as I go into draft season here, which is, even though I love the NFL, it's my favorite. Gosh, I love the offseason. I love the draft. So pumped for it coming up. Pumped to do a lot of draft stuff here in the offseason.
Yep. Dave, anything you want to say before we get out of here?
No, it's been a fun year. Glad everyone tuned in, and it's pretty cool. Week 17. I mean, to be honest, in the fantasy community, this is usually when we see a lot of drop off, and there was a lot of questions. That was kind of encouraging. So it's good that people are still engaged and having fun. So glad everyone contributed.
Absolutely. All right. Well, for Nate, who will be back on Fourth and Frames, I think, like I said, they're going to be doing a year in review type of episode coming up soon this week. JT and I will be on Shoot the Gap this Friday at 8 p.m. Where we're going to be reviewing our sack lunch predictions, and one of us will be taking a pie to the face at 8 p.m. Eastern. So that'll be fun.
I hope it's not me.
No kidding. I hope it's
just say it.
I don't have a great track record. I've lost pie bets here, as Nate will remind you of. But yeah, definitely look forward to that. Look forward to the Daily Fix podcast on Friday at 9 p.m. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern, here on the Fantasy and Frames channels, we have the return of the Fantasy and Frames draft show. The draft show, where I believe the Stacey Perez and her crew will be going over the different playoff fantasy platforms we'll be participating in. And we'll be sending out link invites to people who are interested in joining for those leagues. So again, that's at 8 p.m. tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. Thank you all very much. We love you. Thank you very much for all your support. Good luck. Get those championships. Let us know in our various social media platforms. Did we help you get a title? Or did it help you come close? Or did we at least make this entertaining for you and fun for you throughout the entire fantasy football season?
I was going to say good luck to Drew and Nate going head-to-head in Fantasy and Frames League for the championship today. So good luck to both of those guys. Hopefully they get a battle going. And good luck to everybody with their championships. Hopefully you win some. I'm in a few. I'm going down the wire. I'm hoping I can get one or two today. And also, you people in the toilet bowl, never give up. Go get that extra pick. Get that money. I'm in a bunch of those right now. I'm fighting through. I was laughing one league. The guy's 6-8, and he's like, "Well, just made the playoffs. 6-8." He's like supposed to win, and I'm laughing because I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I was 6-8. He just beat me in the tiebreaker to make the playoffs. And I'm like, if I would have made the playoffs, I would be winning it. I'm like, so hey, just got to get in, folks. Remember that. Just got to fight and get in the playoffs. You never know what happens once you get there.
Our director of marketing here at Fantasy Frames wishes everybody Happy New Year, as we do to you too. Have a happy New Year. Win those titles. And for everybody here at Fantasy and Frames on the Fantasy Football Kickoff Show, good luck.